God, what if we just burn all these clothes instead of folding them?
It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
Hello, sweet peas. Today, we're gonna do some laundry together, okay? My family, mostly me because I'm mostly in charge of laundry, does this incredible thing that doesn't work. I mean, yeah, we all have clothes to wear. Is it the most incredible system? Probably not. But currently our laundry system, because we are very busy, is Laundry Mountain. So what happens is I feel like we actually wash and dry our clothes on a very regular basis. They don't usually sit in the hamper that long for the most part. They don't sit around waiting to be washed. They mostly get washed and dried fairly quickly. I would say less than 4 days. Most things are in the hamper. A little quicker with the baby because he doesn't have a hamper in his room. And so I don't want the clothes all over the floor in his room. Just because, like, then he just plays with them. Anyway, he doesn't have a laundry hamper in his room because he used to, but then he started climbing into it all the time. So now he doesn't have one. Anyway, all that to say, his clothes probably get washed a little bit quicker. But we wash them, we dry them, we throw them on the couch to be folded that night when we watch Summer House, which is our nighttime annual activity. However, if we were really busy that day and we're tired, or if there's other things that need to be done, especially the kitchen, I won't usually fold the laundry. I'm tired. So then what happens is we keep adding the clean clothes to it, and that's how we get Laundry Mountain. Laundry Mountain could be worse, okay? It's clean clothes sitting on our couch. And there's only 3 of us who live in this house, so we have other seats to sit in during the day. We also, honestly, we don't spend a ton of time in our living room during the day. The baby has school 2 days a week. Then we also have like a recurring weekly play date, another morning of the week. The other 2 mornings, we usually go to the park or something else. So we honestly, we aren't in the living room during the day that much. And then the baby has nap, middle of the day. And then after nap, it's usually almost dinner time, so we go upstairs. So really only Felix and I spend a ton of time in the living room, which is to say there's plenty of space for just 2 people to sit here and ignore Laundry Mountain. But this needs to be dealt with, and I thought we could deal with it together. This is actually Felix's idea of a video, so if it's something you're into, let me know. I end up doing this usually one of the school days every like 2 weeks, but I thought, you know, we could do it together, get some stuff done, chat a little bit. I don't have anything in particular that I want to chat about. I a little bit am leaning towards just like a general parenthood check-in. We're coming up on our kiddo being 2 years old, which feels crazy. And I thought, you know, I could talk about some of the things we've been like learning over the past few years. Some of the things that maybe I wouldn't have known or even really would have been like helpful to know beforehand. I'm sure you can hear the laundry running still, believe it or not. I actually have, I think, 2 more loads to wash after this, but then we'll be totally caught up for, you know, a few days. I feel like actually the first few days after folding Laundry Mountain, we do stay pretty on top of like folding 1 load a day. It's actually a really great segue into things that I've learned 2 years into being a parent. Is people always said when you're a parent you should just run 1 load of laundry a day, fold it that night. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be running that much laundry. What was I thinking? Also, like, how many loads was I running before? What was I doing? I have truly no idea how much laundry I was running before. I think that's true of so many things. People say you don't realize how much free time you had before you had a kid until after you have one. And I was like, I don't know, we're really busy. And that is true. We were really busy because for at least a portion of our infertility journey, we had office jobs. Then I quit. I was a full-time content creator from home. Felix was still working an office job for another year. And then we both quit, and we were streaming almost daily for like a year, 2 years, which seems crazy now because we don't stream at all. I really miss streaming because I like talking to our friends. I like that it had like a live interaction aspect. At the same time, that is also why we stopped doing it, because especially like freshly postpartum, I didn't love the idea of that many people watching me live. We took like a full maternity leave, not from short form because then we would like really be SOL, but from long form on YouTube and from stream. We didn't do anything for at least 2 months, which was only possible because of our streaming community, like raising our like paychecks essentially for 2 months so that we were able to rest. And honestly, like I'm just so endlessly grateful for our streaming community that they were able to do that our friends were able to help. Like it was just so important, especially with our first kid, because we had no idea what we were doing. You know, you think you know, and like we did know what we were doing as far as like, you know, feed him at this time, but like you really don't. It is such a huge change. I've never been angrier that this country doesn't prioritize maternity and honestly paternity leave. But I digress. Yeah, I miss streaming. I would never say that we would never go back. I really think actually we're considering doing like, not exactly streaming, but kind of like let's plays, especially with Felix, playing a game, editing it, putting it up on YouTube, because Felix has always been really into video games. I have not always been into them. I have a Switch. I do play it occasionally, but I mostly just play Stardew Valley while I'm like watching Summer House or whatever other like weird reality TV show we're into. I don't really like play it. And Felix plays their Switch almost daily, honestly. But I do really like video games. I like watching Felix play. When I was pregnant in particular, we would do this thing where we called private streaming, where Felix would play Tears of the Kingdom and I would just watch. And I still really like that. So, I don't know, maybe we would do Let's Plays together, or maybe we would stream again. I think the hard thing about streaming is you have to start like at 10 o'clock or whatever time you say you're gonna start. And what's nice about filming and then editing it is that like so doesn't happen. And it's fine. Like as long as you're filming enough, you're giving yourself enough time to edit, like it is much more lax. And if I like need to sneeze or have to go to the bathroom or I don't know, like I don't feel as, I don't have to be like on the entire time I'm filming. I can take a break, I can, you know, do whatever. And like you can still do that with stream a little bit, but you're gonna lose views if you are taking too many breaks or, you know. So I don't know, I feel like there's a different kind of pressure with it. And so that's why we haven't gone back. Again, never say never. I really miss our friends that were always at stream, our like same like 30-ish people who were always chatty. But we're friends with a lot of them on Instagram. Like I do still keep up with them. But it's hard, especially because like it's kind of like, I don't know, like you're not quite friends, because it's not like we were hanging out with them in person, but it's more than parasocial, because while a parasocial relationship, as far as I understand it, is like me in middle school knowing every single like thing that Hilary Duff was doing as far as like her tour, her set list, what she was wearing, and then knowing like, you know, her favorite color's this, and like feeling like I know her because of these informational bits that I was given, but she had no idea who I was, but I felt like I know her, like I knew her. That, from what I understand, is parasocial, like definitionally. But our stream friends, like it was a back and forth, so like we did know some things, you know, I knew that like this person was in school, I knew that this person was getting married, you know, I knew that this person liked these kind of jokes. I don't know, so it's kind of hard because it's like, I miss my friends. Same as like when you move schools, you know? But it just wasn't, I don't know, we started canceling so much. And I know people who, particularly people who like paid to be subscribers to support us, I know that like some of them were disappointed that we kept canceling, which I think is super fair, because when you pay to be a subscriber, you are using your money to watch the streamer's content with no ads, and then if the streamer isn't streaming as much, like you aren't getting what you paid for, you know what I mean? So like nobody was ever like super snotty or anything, but it's like I can understand, like that would be frustrating, and that is super fair. So then it was like, it is, I think, better for everyone if we just don't stream anymore, because we are canceling too much, because we don't feel like it, or we didn't sleep really well the night before, or, you know, our kiddo's sick, so we just want to snuggle with him, like, and that's why that's like 100% why we do this job, is the flexibility. But yeah, we're not in this job for the money. Maybe one day we will be. That would be great. I wish that for everyone. We're in it because we love it. I genuinely love making videos. I love editing. I love trying something new, like going on a sewing journey and sharing it with you guys. I love that. And I love like the messages we get of people being like, thank you so much for talking about like how times are hard. Like these, like our grocery, Felix's like grocery savings video or our recession core videos. Any of the ones where people comment and they're like, this was really helpful. Like that is the biggest, well, the second biggest reason why we do it is we love it. And then the biggest is because it allows us to spend like the maximum amount of time with our kiddo that we could. He is in school 2 days a week for 3 hours. That is when I do things like this video I'm filming now. Usually while he's in school, it's the only time Felix and I are both working. Even during nap, usually one of us is working and the other one is either like cleaning or cooking or doing something that's like for the house. Sometimes we're both working during nap, but usually one of us is doing like a household task so that if the baby wakes up early or whatever, like one of us can like quickly get to him. But we're only able to do this job 100% because of the people who watch on YouTube and patrons. But I actually recently went to help my friend Ash paint her new house. Everyone say congratulations to Ash for buying her first house. And she's a photographer and a content creator. And she's had a really good couple months, but I know that she's literally on sites like Popular Pays or all of the different sites you can like sign up for as an influencer. She's on there for like hours and hours a day, applying for hundreds of deals just to get a couple. And I think that's just like where we're headed, at least for a while as influencers. And that is not something we like super have time for, but I think we're gonna have to make time for, which is fine. That's how every job is. Again, I'm not complaining. I'm like, this is a laundry and update sort of thing. So I think that's where we're headed next is I think Felix and I are gonna pick like 2 days a week where we get our friends to come watch the baby from like the beginning of nap time, the middle of nap time, till like dinner. And we'll just, one of us will be on the big computer, one of us can be on the laptop, and we'll just like apply to stuff. Boom, 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 as much as we can. If that becomes lucrative enough, maybe we can make it like a weekly thing where we have someone watch him while we do it. We can't do it while he's at school because that's when we're doing things like filming. So it's like, that's the only way we could fit it into our schedule, which we need to do 2 days a month.
2 days a week would be great.
That would be crazy.
Can you imagine? We've just never seen him.
Yeah. 2 days a month that we could have someone watch them. But yeah, that's the only way it could get done is if we change our schedule now and add some other time where he could be watched in, which is possible and why we are so lucky to have so many people who love us and love our baby, you know. So I think that's the next step for us work-wise. Some other things that I have been thinking about as we come up on 2 years of parenthood. It's just, everyone really is making it up, you know? Like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure, both like from me to me and also like from society to me and then like other parents that you meet. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to get it all right, you know? And you want to get it all right, but it's just not, it's not possible to get it all right all the time. We are constantly like asking our parent friends for advice, asking our pediatrician what they think is best, you know, and that's like what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to know how to do everything. You're not. That's okay. You're not supposed to know how to do everything. What you are supposed to do is your best. And I think once you know more, once you know better, you do better. And that's, you know, that's all we can do. And I think that's easier said than done, because I remember like when I decided to go from breastfeeding to formula feeding, I had like known for probably at least a week that like that was gonna have to happen. But it's also like really scary because I think like you watch, you know, like the first thing that comes to mind is the episode of Scrubs where Carla is going through postpartum depression. And I just remember watching it so much as a kid and her being like, you know, I'm a nurse, like I should know how to take care of my own baby, and like I feel like an idiot basically is like the overarching theme of what she's saying. And I think that's exactly how you feel. Like no matter how much support you have, no matter how helpful everyone is, it's like, especially as like the person who gave birth, it feels like asking for any help is like admitting that you can't do it. And I think a huge part of that is just like the hormones of having freshly given birth like really affects the way that you think and the way that you do everything. And now that I'm like finally kind of out of that fog, because supposedly now you're like, your hormones are really out of whack till like 18 months to 2 years. And I was like, there's no way. And they're right. Because I talked about this recently, but I feel like right around 18 months, I feel like I like woke up and I was like, oh my God, it felt like my whole like brain belonged to me again. But it's like that. I remember that's exactly how I felt. Like nobody else in my life was like, you should really be breastfeeding. You should really be breastfeeding. And I was like, for a long time, more than half of, I always had to supplement, but more than half of our kiddo's milk when he was little was breast milk. And I was exclusively pumping because he just never really latched good. And that sucked because when you're pumping, you either have to get comfortable with pumping in front of other people, which I wasn't. Like, even as like I was surprised. I was very surprised that was how I felt because I've always been like, let me get naked in front of my friends and change my clothes. Like, not just like get naked for no reason, but like change clothes in front of my friends, or I don't know. I didn't expect to feel that way. But so then I would like have to leave to like go in another room to pump or whatever. And then like, I also didn't usually, like when that happened, I would miss out on like staring at my baby because usually my baby was in the room with like my husband and our friends. And then I would be sad that I wasn't looking at him, you know what I mean? So, and then I also just felt bad that he like never like latched right. So I was like, you know, is it my fault? And I think everything is like that. Like you think everything is your fault all the time. And it, again, like it's not, I mean, for me, it's not that anybody was giving me any like pressure about it. It's just like, I think it's just the way that I was designed, the way that many people are designed postpartum, and like that sucks, you know. Like, and I think also something that happened to me in particular is I just remember being so like, I don't know, I just kept like, I felt like I was like crazy, and that's not a word that I like use lightly. But like I felt like the like woman, it felt like I was living my life as like the woman in every horror movie whose husband doesn't believe that there's a ghost in the house. And like, not that my husband didn't believe the things I was saying, but like that type of like energy was like constantly over me. I just felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And it really was just the hormones of it all. Now, I will say, people constantly say, like, if you, like, you know your baby best, if you think something's wrong, like, keep pursuing answers. It wasn't anything like that. He was normal. We did a lot of Googling all the time, being like, we were literally watching our home videos recently of the first, like, couple months that he was alive. And we were talking about how we had just Googled, like, types of cries. And he was crying for, like, maybe 20 minutes, like... And honestly, he was probably just uncomfortable because it's hard to be a baby. But, like, that's how it is. But anyway, I just kept also crying because I just felt so bad for people who were, like, single moms. Because I was having, like, such a tough time, even with, like, so much support and love. And so then I just kept being like, what about, like, all of the moms in, like, war-torn countries? What about all the moms who are, like, single moms? Or like moms who are in prison and so they can't like actually be with their baby. Like, it was just, I just kept like feeling bad for every mother who's ever lived. And I am laughing because it's like, it's not that it's ridiculous that I cared that much. It's like, it was taking up so much of my brain space because it's just such a, I don't know, people say that like giving birth and having a baby, you like become part of this club. And it's so true. Like, I think of every person differently, including people that I hate. I think of them differently now because I'm like, you were a former baby. Have you guys seen that quote that's been going around because of Mother's Day recently where it's like, the only people on this earth are mothers and their children? I haven't stopped thinking about it. Now, mothers isn't like the most inclusive language, okay, but bear with me. That is like what the thing says. You know what I mean. You guys know. Birthing people who gave birth and their children. And it's so, I haven't stopped thinking about it. How did we get to a society where men are in charge of anything? I'm not really getting it. It's not clocking to me. And so anyway, there's also like that also makes me angry. And it just made me angrier, like freshly postpartum at so many things. And like having election night happen when I was like, 5 months? Postpartum? I think that should have been a crime. I think the minute that they were like, this is gonna be the results, I think they should have just pulled the plug on the whole country, you know? I persist. We persist out of spite. We thrive out of spite. So I think that you do join a club. And unfortunately, I think it's like mostly a club of rage at like society and people who've put down any woman, even women who haven't given birth, even people who haven't given birth. But it's like, yeah, it's bananas. It is bananas. And then I also, like, we have a little boy, right? And I feel like that's just such a huge responsibility that I didn't know if I was ready for. And I don't know if anybody knows if they're ready, but how I feel right now is that, like, there's such a big responsibility with raising boys in particular, because there is just, like, constant, not right now, because he's 2, but as he grows up, there's just, like, constant noise of people like Andrew Tate or whoever, like, trying to get their claws into these young men to feed them this, like, horrible rhetoric, and you have to be on alert for that. And that's not to say that doesn't happen also to, like, young women. And again, like, gender is a spectrum. Okay, I'm using, like, general terms. Hopefully everyone understands that. That can happen to anyone of any gender. But young boys in particular, I feel like, are really susceptible to these lies. And that is, like, really stressful to know that that is eventually coming. But with the help of my therapist, it's like, you know, we can only do our best, and we continue to, like, really talk about and foster, and we will continue to do that as he grows up, that, like, we care about other people, you know, like, we listen to other people's feelings, like, other people are really important, you know, and, like, we also plan to really obviously monitor when our kid is eventually on the computer. I think we're bringing back Family Computer. You guys remember growing up in the early 2000s and there was, like, Family Computer, and it was, like, in the corner of the living room or a place where, like, everybody could see you? That's how, like, all computers should be, I think, because especially if you've, like, someone younger than, like, 16 in your home, because, like, why was I on, like, a laptop in my room being like, hee, I'm 14, I'm gonna get on Omegle, however you say it, and talk to 30-year-old men? I shouldn't have had the ability to do that. You know, and I mostly actually came out unscathed compared to some people I know, but it still the door shouldn't have been open in that way. And so, yeah, we're bringing back Family Computer. And I think a lot of people our age are doing that with their kiddos. But anyway, I digress. I do think you join a club, and I think the club is mostly filled with rage, but, like, in a powerful way almost. If you haven't read Night Bitch, you should. Especially if you are someone who's given birth. You should really read it, because I think about it all the time. And I actually have, like, a really supportive and nice husband who does so much for me. But the husband in the book, who honestly I think on purpose is not written horribly. He's not, like, the worst husband you've ever heard of. He's, like, you know, I do think he's, like, trying his best, which I think makes the book all the more powerful, because it's, like, it is embarrassing that man is, like, a pretty good example of a pretty good dad by, like, at least American standards. It's just so good. It's such a good book. I still haven't watched the movie. Maybe our next date night we will, because Felix also read it. But they made a movie. It's on Hulu. It's bananas. It really is bananas. I am curious how, like, our next postpartum part of our lives will go. We're not planning on trying for a sibling for at least a year, maybe a little longer, depending on, you know, insurance and a couple other things. So, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it'll be different. I know, like, pregnancies can really vary from child to child, but I'm very curious. I think for sure number one will be less, like, stressed out, just because, like, well, we've done it before, you know? Like, assuming that, like, our next kiddo is, like, also healthy and, like, chill and fine, I think we'll be less stressed out. Hopefully. One can only hope. But I don't know. Like, will we be, in a way, like, even more protective, because we'll also have, like, a little kid whose feelings we need to protect and whose, like, safety we need to think of. And like we had people wear masks, I think the first 2 months with our firstborn, anytime they were holding him, just so they weren't, like, directly breathing on him. because he was too young to get, vaccinated for COVID or other things. We're really lucky that our kiddo was born in the middle of summer. So, or I guess kind of the beginning of summer, depending on who you ask, which is like historically not like flu season or anything like that. So, that brought me a little bit of peace of mind. Makes me really nervous for if our next kid is born in the middle of like RSV season. Like, will we just not leave our house? Like, I don't know. And then also, will the kid like in school? And I know like a lot of folks who's like 3-month-olds get RSV because like some kid at the older kid's school got it. And so I'm a little nervous about that since our kid will be older. I think that's like the only big benefit I can see to like 2 under 2 is that when your older kid is in school, your younger kid is at least like big enough to have a lot of their vaccines. But, I've never heard anyone complain about the age gap that their kids are. I feel like everyone thinks that their age gap is like really good, and I think there's pros and cons to all of them. So I'm not really stressed about it. I have a couple of friends who got pregnant really young with their first and then later like settled down and got married, and so they have like a younger kid who's like 9 or 10 years younger. They seem to get along really well. I think that's nice because then your older one can help out as much as they want. Sorry, I'm like, this like letter keeps getting stuck to my leg. And then, they can have their own sort of bond. But also, I mean, when I see people with 2 under 2, it seems like it's really hard a lot of the time. Not something I'm super interested in. Not possible, actually, since our oldest one is about to turn 2 also. But it seems like when they're a little older, they're really close, because they're going through the same things at like similar times like that. That's a benefit. I don't know. Yeah, let me know what age gap are you and your siblings? Did you like it? You think it was good? My sibling who's closest to me and younger than me is about 2.5 years apart, and I really liked that. I don't really remember him coming home from the hospital, but I remember like growing up with him, and I thought that was really cool. But then my sibling who's youngest is like 4 years younger than me, like 4 and some change, and 5 years. And I remember like my like first-ish strong memories are like him coming home from the hospital. I remember going to the hospital to meet him because my mom is like the type of person who didn't find out the sex of the kids until like they were born. That could never be me. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, if you feel like that's like the best kind of excitement, then like go off. I feel like I'm like a dreamer. I feel like people always say like I'm such a planner, and that is true, but I feel like it's more about like like dreaming of like what they might look like. And honestly, like those things really don't change, especially for a baby, based on like the sex of the baby when they're born. But I don't know. I feel like it's like the first thing you get to like learn about them, and that is exciting, and so I want to know. But yeah, I do kind of get the lure of not finding out, but I don't think it would ever be me. Anyway, I remember finding out that my youngest brother was a boy, like on the way to the hospital, or maybe just as we were walking in, and I was disappointed because I wanted a little sister so bad. I had like asked Santa for a little sister for many years, but it all worked out. I liked having 2 younger brothers. I think that's like why I'm so excited. I'm so excited to like the kid we have is like just the funniest, most interesting person. Every single day he learns like how to do something new. Every single thing he does is so amazing to me that I'm like, I'm like jonesing to get to know the next one, like to get to meet our next kiddo. And so I think having to wait is like, hard sometimes. But then at the same time, anytime like our toddler's having a rough time, I'm like, thank goodness we only have the one right now. Like some people have twins. My sister had twins. Or some people have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and a newborn. Some people do that. They're so brave. They are braver than any soldier I know. That's bravery. But I think something else that people will tell you this, and it just doesn't mean anything until you've been a parent for a while. But people will say like, you'll figure it out. And it just like isn't comforting. It just isn't. Like I remember our kid has, most of his friends are at least like 6 months older than him. So when we hang out with our friends, we would see like what like the next stage is kind of. So I remember hanging out with our friend whose baby is like right at like 6 or 7 months older than our kid, and watching her run around holding like a pet. Like anytime she could, she'd wriggle away and start running down the hallway with like a pen or something she wasn't supposed to have. Or I remember like watching her eat and just like shoving food in her mouth, and I was like, oh my god, she's gonna choke, over and over. And I was like, how are we possibly gonna be able to deal with that when our kid is doing that? Like I'm having heart palpitations just watching. But they're right. You'll figure it out. You really do. You are capable. You're very smart. Especially if you pick the right person, which I hope you do. You'll figure it out. You're a team. You'll get through it. Now, I think something else that I really have just been thinking about is, do you guys remember that bit that Aziz Ansari had in his stand-up comedy years ago, where he was like, I think having a kid is like, he didn't say it's the bravest thing you could do, but he didn't say it was the stupidest thing, but he was like, it's such a gamble. Because you can do everything right, you can read every book, you can go to every class, and like you could still end up with a shitty kid, which I think is a mean thing to say. But I think what he's kind of saying, and he also isn't a parent, I don't think now, but I definitely not at that time, is like you can do everything like right, and your kid could still not be potty trained until they're 5. They could still not be able to fall asleep on their own till they're 7. You know, like, every kid's just different. You know, I think do what you're supposed to. Try that first. And if that doesn't work, try something else. And that's just true. There's so many things where people will be like, oh, I can't believe, like, I'm trying to think of an example without giving, you know, I try to not give, like, too much information about our kiddo away. Oh, he's, like, a really good eater. That's not, like, language we use in front of him, because I don't ever want him to feel, I don't want him or any of his friends who don't eat as much to feel some type of way about it. But an engaged eater. But he's really interested in most foods. Very rarely have we had an issue where this is like he won't touch broccoli, or you know what I mean. Now what I will say is, just like every other toddler, sometimes there are days where our kiddo eats 4 grapes and that's all he eats all day because he doesn't want to eat, and then the next day he eats like a meal every 2 hours, and that's just what it's like. Even pediatricians will say, you know, don't focus so much on like how much your kid eats in a day. It's more like what they eat in a week. Because the way, you know, if you Google it, they'll explain it better. But basically, like, toddler bodies literally are completely different from adult bodies. And their bodies just don't really run on like a daily sort of system. Basically, we didn't do anything to make that happen. We didn't do anything. You know, we did what was recommended, which is just like offering a bunch of different foods over the times that we were introducing food. Anytime he seemed interested in something, as long as it was something he could like legally eat, we let him try it, like, you know, even if it was like spicy or within reason, obviously. But anyway, yeah, he's just like that. We have friends whose kids are the same age or a little slightly older and have always only eaten chicken nuggets. That's fine. They are this little for so little time. Like, it really is fine. You know, try your best to throw some vegetables in there when you can, but it really is fine. Like, there are much more stressful things that require more attention, I feel. Yeah, all that to say, you can do everything right and still end up with a kid who's having XYZ issue, timeline-wise, or you can do everything like whatever, and your kid will be really good at falling asleep on their own, or... And again, I'm not saying that to mean like nothing matters. You know, there's someone in my family like really worked hard on teaching their like newborn to fall asleep on their own. Not like cry it out, but just like getting them like drowsy and setting them down. They really committed to that. And now she is, you know, a little over a year, and she completely gets herself to sleep on her own all the time. That's not something we did. That might be something we do with the next one. And I don't know if she would have done that if they hadn't done the right steps. But also, I know people who did all the right steps, and their kid never slept on their own. You know, like, there's not a one-size-fits-all for anything. That is just, like, so true. That's why it's important to not only listen to, like, whatever you're Googling, but listen to your friends. Ask your parents, ask your grandparents. Was so-and-so an engaged eater? Did so-and-so, like, fall asleep on their own? I don't know. What did you try when you were potty training? You know, like, and just because someone gives you advice doesn't mean you have to follow it, especially me. But it's good to know what advice someone might give in case you wanted to follow it. You know what I mean? I would say the last thing that's been like a little bit on my mind. I think you're going to be seeing this probably like a month after I film it. But right now, when I'm filming, Mother's Day was just a few days ago. And I think for me, at least, it brings up such complicated feelings. First of all, I am a mother, which is great. That's like the biggest thing I always wanted to be. It's like what I always talked about anytime we did like, what do you want to be when you grow up? In school, like anything like that, I was always like, I want to be a mom. And that's still how I feel. It's amazing. Even when it's like exhausting, even when, you know, I am worried that I'm not doing the right thing. Like, it is absolutely what I've always wanted to do. And it's so much better than I could have imagined. I think sometimes people say like, I don't know if I want kids. And I think depending on your age and your like situation, because I think if you say that at 20 years old, it's like, I don't know. But if you're like a little bit older, a little more established, and you're still thinking, I don't know if this is something I want, I feel like that's kind of an answer in itself. And this is like general advice. I obviously do not know every single person in the world. So don't necessarily take this as truth. But I always knew that I wanted kids. I was always really certain of it. I never even for a second doubted it. And I think if that's not how you're feeling, then maybe it isn't the right choice for you. Because it's hard, but it is like, I think also easy because it's something that I've always wanted. And that is not to say like, if you have a super hard time, that means like maybe you didn't want your kids. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking to folks who haven't had them yet. I don't think that the minute you're like, this is so hard, that means you regret having kids. That's not what I'm saying. But like, I think, you know, like Chapel Roan, that like controversy from like, I don't know, 6 months ago, a year ago, where she was like, no mother that I know is happy. First of all, I think that, and I don't know her. Let's get that straight. I don't know Chapel Roan. I don't know her friends. But I think, first of all, I think that means she's not that close with those friends. And how could she be? She's like always busy on tour. Like, I don't know how you could be super close with anyone who had kids. And again, I don't know her. I don't know. But it's just something that like, if you don't want kids, which I think Chapel said she doesn't, if you don't want them, obviously it's going to sound hellacious. Like, not to be, I don't know, not to be whatever, but like, yeah, it's not going to sound fun because it wouldn't be fun to you. And I think the closest, and not the same, but I think the closest example that I personally have is I hate, capital H, I hate camping. I really don't even like hiking or being outside that much. In like the woods. I really love to be outside at like the beach or anything water based. I'll do it all day. But like, I hate camping and I hate like the woods, like forests. And I think they should exist, to be clear. I'm very like pro conservation. It is not for me. When people describe like going on a hike and then they like had to pitch a tent and like cook their food from like a fish they found in the river, that to me is like my own personal hell. That sounds horrible. Peeing in the woods, I would rather throw up 4 times than have to pee in the woods. And I'm not exaggerating. I hate it so much. But some people obviously probably don't love peeing in the woods, but they love like being in nature. Like, it's all worth it to them to like be in nature. All that to say, maybe this is silly, but I think like having kids is like at least a little similar to that, because I'm describing like, you know, oh, I haven't slept more than like 4 hours at a time in 2 years. Like, that sounds so awful to some people. And that part in and of itself isn't like the most fun, but it is like so worth it to even spend like 5 minutes with my kid. Like, it's amazing. It's the best thing in the world. It's like my own personal brand of heroin to spend time with him. And so, yeah, it is worth it. But if I was describing those things to someone who like already doesn't really like kids that much, it's gonna sound horrible and it's gonna sound like I'm having a bad time. But, you know, I'm not. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of a silly example, but that's like something I've been thinking recently because Felix is planning a camping trip that I won't be going on, but the baby will be. And I was like, this sounds not up my alley, and that's okay. Everybody has different things that they like, you know? Or I think another similar example, because it's very similar to camping, is like Coachella. When people talk about going to Coachella and having like so much fun, or Bonnaroo, any of those like music festivals, that sounds horrible to me. First of all, live music, I have to like really like the band or performer to go see like live music, because I feel like you have to stand the whole time. It's really loud. It doesn't sound the same as it does on the recording. I feel like most bands sound not worse exactly, but obviously like every single note isn't going to be perfect because it's not being recorded and like picking out the best takes of everything. And like that is the beauty of it. to some people for sure. The same way I love live theater. That's the beauty of live theater to me. But at like a show, like a concert, like everyone's so close to you and it's so sweaty. Anyway, then doing that outside, which I've just discussed, is not my favorite thing. And the porta potty situation, I won't use a porta potty. I probably haven't used a porta potty, and that's not true. I used one when I was pregnant because I had to pee so bad. Other than that, and it was only once, and it was at the farmer's market. Other than that, I probably haven't used a porta potty in like, I'm not kidding, probably like 15 years. You know? But some people save up their whole life to go to Coachella like once. You know what I mean? Anyway, all that to say, people are different. So, yeah, if you aren't absolutely sure that like having kids is what you want to do, and like supporting, either giving birth or supporting someone who has given birth is something that you want to do, because it's like that part's really tough, then maybe it isn't. And that's also totally fine. Like lots of people are just like in the lives of their niece or nephew or cousins or whoever, and they're very happy and fulfilled. I think especially growing up in the South, people really like talk about having kids as like the end all be all, you know? And that's just not true. I think that's true for me. You know, this is absolutely like the coolest thing I've ever done, and like will be the coolest thing I think I ever do. But that doesn't mean people who want other things or do other things, or I don't know, that doesn't mean there's not like a lot of merit to it. You know? I don't know. That's also something I think about a lot. One more thing that's been on my mind since it's been Mother's Day. If you didn't know, Felix and I in 2021 had a miscarriage of our first pregnancy. And when that happened, it was like my worst fear. It is something I've always been, since I was a little kid, like always been afraid would happen. My mom had a miscarriage before she had me, and I like knew not a lot about it as in like the details, but like I always grew up knowing that it was something my mom had experienced that was really hard for her. And, you know, so it was something I was always afraid was going to happen to me. And it did. And it was horrible. It was horrible. Like there's no other word for it. You know, it was horrible for a number of reasons. One of which being like we hadn't even been like seen by the OB yet, because they were like, if something is like, if you're having a miscarriage, there's not anything we can do. And that is like true, but I think like the clinical way that the person on the phone was like saying it was like, I just remember being like so hurt that she didn't even seem to care. And like she doesn't know me, so like she didn't care. But that was awful. And then, you know, going on a 2-year infertility journey afterwards was also just like, it sucked. It felt like everyone I knew was getting pregnant. It felt like everyone I knew was getting accidentally pregnant. My God, talk about a slap in the face for people to be like, yeah, whoops. And like, you know, or like, you know, when we had been trying for a year and nothing had happened, Felix and I were like, you know what, like let's put a cruise on our credit card and just go have like a nice vacation and like not think about trying to get pregnant for a while. And that was great. No regrets. It was so amazing. But I remember being on that cruise, and the way that like the Disney cruise at least works is you're sitting like next to the same families at dinner every night. You're not like at the same table as them, but you like are in the same layout at every restaurant basically. And one of the families next to us had 3 little girls. One of them was probably like, I don't know, like 7 months old. Then one was probably like 7, and then there was like a 5-year-old, maybe like 4. And the 4-year-old, who was the middle child, just like clearly wanted a lot of attention. She wasn't like hitting her siblings or anything, but she was just like kind of loud and like, you know, really wanted everyone to notice her and just like being her age. And so from the next table over, you know, Felix and I are like laughing at her and like giving her attention. Yeah, so the mom is like, you can take her home if you want. And I was like, I would. Like, you have no idea, I would. And I remember like those Mother's Days where, you know, I was a mother for like a little while before, and then I wasn't. So those were like in particular really hard. And I think even now, having our kiddo Earthside and like having him here with us, like it's just still, I don't know, like I think about that first baby all the time, like how old they would be, what they would be into, like all of it. But it's hard because at the same time it's like, you know, if that pregnancy had been like totally fine, I don't know if we would have our current baby. Like I don't know if we would have had him at the same time we ended up having him. Like I don't know anything. And now that I'm like pretty far removed from it, I still think that like there is nothing people can say that makes it easier. There isn't. There's nothing people can say that makes it easier. You know, if someone's been through it and they try to say, like, I know how you feel, like, that hurts, you know? That makes it feel like what you're going through isn't, like, special or different or... And, like, as far as, like, the grief of a miscarriage existing, like, obviously, like, logically you know that it isn't, like... But it feels so isolating. Like, it just really does. And so... I don't know, like, I am so lucky and so grateful to be where I'm at, to have this incredible kid, to have this incredible family. And then, you know, I don't waste time, like, wondering over, like, what could be so that I'm, like, missing what's happening. I don't feel like that's what's happening currently or anything. But it is, like, something that will never go away. Like, it is something that I think about all the time. I think about... you know, finding out that we were pregnant. I think about, like, telling the couple of people we had told. I will say I'm very much of the opinion now that, like, as far as telling people in your life, just tell them. Just tell them, because if something does go wrong, like, you want people around you who, like, knew and were excited with you. I think that probably we would still never say anything to, like, our following until, like, further along in a pregnancy. I don't know, like, a little bit, because I'm worried about bad luck. You know, I'll say it. I don't know if I believe in luck, but I know that if something did happen, I would blame it on that, so I might as well not put myself in that situation by not saying anything. And then, but yeah, like, I'm super glad that we had told a few people in our life. The worst part was definitely telling them about the miscarriage, because I didn't want to talk to anyone on the phone. I didn't. Like, I just texted people and said, like, hey, we just got back from being in the emergency room all night. Like, this is what happened. I don't want to talk. But just so you know. And, like, people honestly really respected that. Nobody tried to call me besides my therapist. Like, you know, it was what it was. And then we were, I don't know, paralyzed for months. It felt like I just didn't want to do anything. And I don't regret that. Like... I don't. That was what I needed. Like, you know, I would say how I feel now is, like, I think if I had done things too quickly, like, if I had gone back to normal, like, too quickly, I think I would have felt like it was a disservice to that pregnancy. And that's not to say other people who are, like, distracting themselves by doing fun things are doing that. I think that's just how, like, I would have felt. I think everybody has to grieve in whatever way they can. But that was what it was for me and for Felix, and it was rough. I feel like sometimes people ask if we're gonna tell our kiddo that he's a rainbow baby, and I think the answer is absolutely, but I don't want it to feel like, I don't want it to turn into, like, pressure. Like, I don't want it to be, I feel like sometimes people say, like, this is my miracle baby. It's like, then that kid has to live up to this expectation of, like, being a great, perfect kid. And I don't ever want him to feel that way. I think that's how I felt sometimes. Whether it be, like, how my parents intended it or not, that was definitely, like, how I felt sometimes. And I don't want that to happen to him. So I think it's something that he'll know about. Like, I don't want it to be a secret, but it's not something we plan to, like, talk about a lot, really. I think it would only really come up while he's young if one of his, like, friends' parents also went through one, or if I went through another one. But, you know, I feel like now that we're 5 years out from that, there's still grief, but it wouldn't have helped to hear at the time that, like, you will eventually, like, move on. But it is how I feel now. I know that there was, like, nothing we could have done any differently. And there's a little bit of peace in that, but I think there's also, like, a different frustration with that, because that feels so unfair. And it is. It was. But now we're here with our amazing kid who is healthy and silly and perfect in every way, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you so much for your help. Laundry Mountain is complete. I have one more load that's in the dryer that I will do hopefully tonight when I watch Summer House. And otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one. If you like this kind of video of just, like, chatting and folding laundry, let me know. Happily, I could do it again. If you're new here, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got a little bit of motivation out of this. I gotta go put these clothes away before nap time starts. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're one of our patrons, thank you especially. We are able to make this content because of our patrons. You can join for as little as $1, but if you pay over $8, you actually get access to these YouTube videos with no ads. The other content that we post on there is kind of like the long versions of our short form content, so like before it gets edited. We also post every couple weeks these just like long chatting videos talking about what's going on in our lives, and we'd love to see you over there. It is really, really fun, and it is absolutely the reason that we're able to do this job. But if you can't be over there, thank you so much for being here. I love you guys so much. Enjoy the bloopers. Goodbye. Mwah. For cock. Our baby says clock, cock, and it's unfortunately so funny every time. It's really funny.